So far, we learned about fixed tab layouts with text. In this lecture, we are going to learn about scrollable tab layouts with text. To change a fixed tab layout to scrollable, the first thing we need to do is to open the activity main layout. Inside my tab layout, I'm going to change the value of the tab mode attribute. I delete the current value of fixed for this attribute and press Ctrl and space. From the list that appears, I select scrollable. And I close this layout. In a scrollable tab layout with text, we should define a lot of items. I want my tab layout to have 10 items, so I need to define 10 layouts and 10 corresponding Java classes. So we go to the layout section and start creating our item layouts. Next, I right-click on the layout folder and select New Layout Resource File. I give a name to my layout, for example, item_4. And I change its root element from linear layout to relative layout. Next, I add a text view inside my relative layout. To do that, I open item3.xml and I copy the text view that I have already defined inside that layout. Then I paste it inside my relative layout in the file item4.xml. I also change its text to 4. And I extract its string resource with alt and return. Once I created my fourth layout, I create a new one and I name it item5. As before, I change its root element to relative layout. I open the text section. I change its text to 5. Alt and return, extract string resource and OK. I close this layout and I create a new one for my sixth item. I name it item6 and I change its root element to relative layout. I go to the text section and inside the relative layout, I paste the text view that I have already copied into the clipboard. Make sure you change its text. Alt and return, extract string resource and OK. The next layout is item 7, and its root element as before will be relative layout. I go to the text section and paste my text view inside the relative layout. For its text, I enter 7. As usual, I extract its string resource with alt and return. And the new layout for the next item, I name it item 8. I change its root element to relative layout. I go to the text section and I paste the text view inside my relative layout. And I change its text to 8. Next layout, item 9. Relative layout and OK. And I add the text view to this layout as well. And finally, I create my final layout and I name it item 10. And I change its root element to relative layout. I go to the text section, add my text view, and change its text to 10. So what we did was that we created 7 layouts in addition to the 3 previous layouts that we had created in the previous lecture, and now we have 10 layouts that we want to add to our tab layout. Next, we want to create Java classes for our layouts. I create a new class and I name it ForFragment. I remove these comments. Next, this class has to inherit from the fragment class. So, after the class name, I type extends fragment. Inside this class, I press Ctrl and return and create a constructor for my class. Next, I go to the code menu and select override method. From the list that appears, I find onCreateView and add it to my class. I remove the return super statement from onCreateView and create a view object inside the ForFragment class. Next, I use this view object inside onCreateView this way. View equals inflator.inflate. Inside the parentheses, I must enter a layout resource, so I pass in my item layout r.layout.item4. For the next argument, I pass in container, and for the last one, I enter false. And finally, I return my view object. Okay, now I close ForFragment and create a new Java class. This class is for my 5th layer, so I name it 5Fragment. I get rid of these comments and make 5fragment a subclass of fragment. Then, as in the previous classes, I enter the required methods and codes. For the inflate method, I pass in the layout corresponding to this class, which is r.layout.item5. The rest of arguments are just like before. I close 5fragment and create the new class 6fragment. Again, I make this class a subclass of fragment. I add the onCreateView method to the class. I create a view object and then use it to inflate my layout. For its layout resource argument, I pass in r.layout.item6 and the two other arguments as before, container and false. And finally return the view. I create the next class. I name it 7fragment. I make it a subclass of fragment and create its constructor. And I overwrite onCreateView. Next, I create my view object and use it inside the onCreateView method. As before, to the inflate method, I pass in its related layout, r.layout.item7, and the next arguments, container and false. And finally, I return my view object. My next class is 8fragment. Again, I use the extends keyword because my class is supposed to be a subclass of fragment. I create its constructor and then override its onCreateView method. I create my view object and initialize it inside the onCreateView method. Alright, the layout corresponding to the 8fragment class is r.layout.item8, comma, container, comma, and false. And I return the view object. The next class is 9fragment. Extends fragment. I add the constructor and override the onCreateView method. Within the class, I create my view object. Then, inside the onCreateView method, I type view equals inflator.inflate For its layout resource, I enter r.layout.item9. And my next arguments are container and false. And return view. And the next class is 10fragment. Extends fragment. The constructor method. onCreateView. I define my view object, and inside the onCreateView method, I type view equals inflator.inflate. To the inflator method, I pass in the layout related to the 10fragment class, which is r.layout.item10. And I pass container and false for the next two arguments as before. And finally return view. And that's it for the 10fragment class. To sum it up, so far we added 10 layouts in the layout section for our tab layout. And we also added 10 Java classes corresponding to our 10 layouts. Next, I go to main activity, and I'm going to add my new classes to my ViewPager adapter. Then I'm going to add a title for them as well. I type adapter.addFragment and inside the parentheses I need to add a fragment. So I type new for fragment, an instance of my for fragment class. And for its title part, I type item 4. Adapter dot add fragment. For its first argument, fragment, I type new 5 fragment, an instance of the 5 fragment class. And for the title, I type item 5. Adapter dot add fragment. Inside the parentheses, I pass in an instance of the 6 fragment class, new 6 fragment, and for the second argument, I type item 6. Adapter dot add fragment. Inside the parentheses, new 7 fragment, and for the title, item 7. Adapter dot add fragment. This time for the 8 fragment class, new 8 fragment, and the second argument, item 8. Adapter dot add fragment, new 9 fragment, and for its title, I enter item 9. And finally, I add my last fragment to the adapter object. New 10 fragment with the title of item 10. Alright, we're done with main activity. Now if we run our project on the emulator, we should see 10 items inside our tab layout. Items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, let's check it out on the emulator. Alright, our application is up and running. As you can see, this time inside our tab layout we see more items in comparison with the previous version of our application. Note that here item 1 is selected by default. I select item 2. Pay attention to the layout of every item that we have defined in their respective layout files. Also note that in this mode, our tab layout is scrollable, and in addition to the fact that you can have more items to your tab layout, you can also scroll your tab layout to the right or left, and as a result, access more items on your tab layout. And that's it for scrollable type tab layouts with text. Okay, that's enough for this lecture, I guess. In the next lecture, I'm going to get output from my scrollable tab layout project.